Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, Partnering for Success in the China Consumer and Ingredient Markets, a new product pipeline to China. This webinar will include a panel of speakers today. The first is UNPA President Loren Israelsen. Loren is the founder and president of the United Natural Products Alliance, an international trade association of dietary supplement companies committed to safety, science, and quality. He has been deeply involved in the commercial and regulatory issues facing the global dietary supplement industry since 1980. Loren Israelsen has authored over 150 articles, book chapters, and has lectured in over 30 countries on dietary supplement and functional food issues. The next member of our panel today is NASC, it's the National Animal Supplement Council, co-founder and president Bill Bookout. Bill is a founding member of the National Animal Supplement Council, serving as president from 2002 to May 2012, returning as president in February 2014, and continuing as chairman of the board of directors of this nonprofit organization. Finally, our panel includes Eurofins thought leaders, including me, Jason Mulligan, and my colleague, Nate Ensrud. I currently lead Eurofins botanicals and dietary supplement testing commercial development in partnership with my colleagues Clint Troop, who leads Eurofins botanicals testing in Brea, California, and Nate, who leads our vitamins testing lab in Madison, Wisconsin. Before we begin, I'll let you know more about how this webinar will run. The webinar is being recorded, and the slides and recording will be available for you within 3 business days. A brief Q&A session will follow the presentation to answer viewer-submitted questions. During the webinar, you can submit questions you have using the webinar sidebar menu. Select the Questions tab, type in your question, then hit the Enter key on your keyboard. Remember, you can submit questions throughout the webinar. And with that, I will turn it over to Loren.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you to Eurofins for hosting and to all of you who are attending as well. This is an important day because we are announcing for the first time the collaboration between 4 parties that are jointly working together to develop 2 critical strategic goals for the US-China market with respect to raw materials that we buy from China, as well as how US companies can develop a new export business channel into the very fast-growing Chinese consumer healthcare market. So I will share the stage first, and my intention is to take you through some of the background, the history of what has brought us to this collaboration, and where we're going, and hope to interest you in participation as our objective. So first slide, Nate, is we actually have some great news to share, is that earlier this month, UNPA was granted what's called a Market Development Cooperator Program Award, which is granted through the Department of Commerce and the International Trade Administration. This is a substantial grant over 4 years, which includes a monetary pool of funds to work with to advance our project, as well as a dedicated team of about a dozen members of the Department of Commerce, the US Commercial Service, the US Embassy in China, that will assist us in this program. That's significant for a number of reasons. This is the stamp of authority of the United States government that believes in this program. When we submitted our grant and we had feedback from the reviewers, they said this is one of the best proposals that they had ever seen. Little bragging here, but that's true, that's what they said. And they also felt that the importance of this particular opportunity was very, very timely. And so we look forward now to having as a 5th partner, actually, the United States government through the Department of Commerce. And they're first rate. So we had a conference call the other night with 12 people on 3 continents, and they're fully dedicated to this project. Next slide, please. So first, let me give you a quick overview of the China market. You may know this, but let me just, for the sake of laying the foundation, remind you. NBJ estimates the supplement market in China to be about $20 billion 2019. We think it's actually a bit bigger than that. Growth rate is at least 7.5%. And again, we think that that is probably somewhat low. What's very important is the growth of the cross-border e-commerce sector. That's the CBEC that you see in the first bullet. Sales there have climbed to $3 billion. What has frustrated US companies that have wanted to do business in China for many years is they've had to deal with an old system that was the blue hat registration process. And I'll show you some data down the road to show you why you had good reason to be frustrated. What has happened is as all the Western world has evolved into this massive e-commerce environment, especially now, and with China's sophistication in technology and social media, the future of China in terms of natural product health sales for humans and for pets is going to be in the cross-border e-commerce arena. Australia has been the traditional leader. They have done extremely well. If you've been tracking the Australian market, is how dominated their sales profile is by sales to China. One reason for that is that they're very well organized, they work together, and they've had extremely strong support from the Australian government. Well, we've been able to now answer them on that final point, is we have the support of the US government, and through this program, we intend to organize ourselves in a way that our goal is to be a market leader in China, and to we'll say hello to our friends from Australia as we pass them in sales figures. We have a lot of respect for them, but we'd certainly like to be the market leader. Also, I would point out, and this is really significant for anyone who's trying to do business at all in China, is that travel to China is extremely difficult because of COVID-19 and other restrictions that are in place. That has created a problem of managing your suppliers where no auditing, no certifying, no facility inspections are going on, no opportunity to do the usual socializing and business development. We think that we have some ways to overcome that. Daniel Maybe is our Asia president. He is based in Beijing. He is a native of Utah. He speaks nearly perfect Mandarin and is extremely familiar with and works very closely with the Chinese industry and government. So we have eyes and boots on the ground in China, and at the moment that's exceptionally important. And as a point of interest is the majority of foreigners that have been living and working in China have left China. There are very few foreigners still in country. So having Daniel on site has become more important than ever. Next slide, please. As if you've been following US-China trade relations, you'll know that a negotiation agreement was reached that is called the phase 1 of a new trade deal. And the figures you see below are the numbers, are the amounts of trade or export from the US to China that China agreed to. As you can see from the figures, they're substantially lagging in the agreements of where they should be. Now, granted, COVID-19 put a big dent in ability to meet these projections, but we do know that the Chinese government does want to speed this process up. We regard this as an opportunity. Our particular sector of human and animal dietary supplements is one of the most interesting and hottest categories in the consumer market in China. It's also apolitical. It's not one of those issues where there's concerns about sensitivity of information flows. And so we're in a very good spot to develop our marketplace in a non-controversial way. So if you look at these target numbers, we're hoping to push those yellow lines a bit farther across the screen. Next slide, please. For many of you that have tried to enter China in the past, you have run into this logo. This is a blue hat registration logo. The way the Chinese government had organized things is you needed to go through the China SFDA, their FDA, and to submit a tremendous amount of paperwork and information to achieve blue hat status that would allow you to sell into the Chinese consumer market. But that market has really been designed for the direct selling industry as well as the physical brick and mortar retail environment. So in recent years, when the cross-border e-commerce market developed, it did not require and does not require a blue hat registration. That has in part caused the explosive growth of that e-commerce sector. But the problem is that it's largely unregulated, and there are significant concerns that have developed around that. Part of it coming directly from the Chinese government that feels it doesn't have good oversight in that consumer market. And we'll get into some of the specific concerns that we will be addressing in our joint project. Next, please. Turning to the raw material sector, because we're going to be talking about the consumer market as well as the raw material market. We all know that China is our dominant raw material supply partner. These sales figures, again, NBJ supplied, suggest that the market is about $7.5 billion in raw material sales. We suspect that that's pretty close, perhaps a little bit higher, but we project it will grow going forward dramatically. However, we have concerns about the quality, the reliability of the supply chain, as well as the ability to really identify first-class, high-quality facilities and factories that are U.S. compliant, specifically GMP and FSMA, to a U.S. standard, that are capable of consistently producing high-quality product. And then there's a critical component of testing this raw material. Historically, many companies here have had problems ordering a product, having a sample specimen which passes spec, and then receiving a container load that does not pass spec. Now you've got a serious problem. And this causes cost, delay, frustration, missed deadlines, lost sales. Next slide, please. So as we look at these critical issues that we're coming together to resolve, first, let's look at U.S. companies going to China. In the cross-border e-commerce marketplace, it is a very competitive knockoff environment. Companies have reported frequently that they will find their product, or what is labeled as their product, being offered online. It's not their product, but somebody has literally overnight produced it and put it into the cross-border marketplace. There really is a lack of market access to the brick and mortar marketplace as well as the direct selling sector because of the need for blue hats. Counterfeit products are very common. The government does have concerns about quality and traceability that they would like to resolve, but they're at the moment not really set up to deal with that in a way that is acceptable to them or to us. Also, price stability is an issue because there's a lot of what's called the suitcase trade, a lot of secondary buying, people who go to Hong Kong, load stuff into the trunk of their car, bring it back to China, suitcases in cars, students coming back from the US bringing things to give as gifts and to use for personal use. Now, Chinese companies want to come to the United States. There are concerns about adulteration on our side. There are multiple steps in that supply chain. There are brokers, and the transparency is certainly not what we hope it to be. It's expensive to audit and to verify, and just building relationships, trusted relationships with China suppliers takes time and a great deal of relationship. And in China, they always refer to guanxi, which is friendship. And in China, unless you have built a guanxi, you're really not going to have a long-term and trustworthy relationship with almost anyone in China. There's also a broad failure to understand US quality requirements. They just don't really know what it means to comply with our regulations. And as the US FDA is determined to ramp up FSMA compliance, we anticipate growing problems with Chinese companies saying, I didn't understand that I have to have a PCQI. What is FSMA? Even 111 compliance, we think, is not fully complied with around the country. And we also see that Chinese companies have difficulty presenting themselves in a competent, professional way, just brand development. You should know that the Chinese government, as a priority, is very interested in improving the impression, the brand image, and brand strength of the Chinese raw material sector going into the natural products arena. Next slide, please. So in terms of competencies, we at UNPA have been working for years to develop the assets necessary to begin to address these problems. We have MOUs with critical players in China. The China Chamber of Commerce for Import-Export is a very powerful player that we work with. Also with the China Nutrition Health Food Association, which represents essentially the same group of companies in China as we see here in the United States with our various trade associations. We also have an MOU with Old Miss, or the National Center for Natural Products Research, that is considered and highly regarded in China. We also have very strong internal training and compliance capability. Larissa Pavlik on our team has 8 years of experience as an FDA investigator and is also going to be involved in doing training along with Eurofins team in China. So we have a wealth of relationships and have spent many years working with the Chinese government, both with the FDA, but more importantly with China customs. And we'll get into that critical role next. Next slide, please. So the partnership that is coming together requires these entities to tackle a challenge as big as meeting the China marketplace. I've explained to you what UNPA's capabilities and interests are. Bill Bookout will shortly explain the strengths and the roles of NASC, as will Eurofins. And one partner that I'd like to introduce you to is the CSIT. This is the China Society for Inspection and Testing. This is the think tank part of China Customs. We have had a number of meetings at the highest levels with China Customs, and why they're important is that they have primary oversight for the importation of products into China that go into the cross-border e-commerce market. And through the program that we're developing is that they're prepared to create a green channel which would have expedited entry of our product into China and also provide the security that the Chinese consumer is looking for. So they're a very critical player because we need someone on the China side that will be the facilitator to bring US products through cleanly and with a reliable system. So that blue logo there is one of the most important you'll see. With their cooperation, things are now possible that were not before. Next slide, please. So as we're looking at how this process works, goal number one is that we are establishing a raw material development system in China that will assure high quality raw material that uses systems that will be explained by Bill that are to 111 and 117 compliance standards, and that Eurofins will be acting as our global partner to do the testing on the China side as materials leave China, and as they enter the United States, they will be retested by Eurofins so that we have end-to-end visibility on that product that left China and finally arrives in the US. We believe this will solve that chronic problem of not getting what you thought you had ordered. And Eurofins is really the only lab in the world that we feel is able to do this, given the strengths and size of their group. They have a very strong team in China, obviously a very strong team here in the United States. So we have had many discussions with the China team at Eurofins, and we've worked very closely with Nate and Jason and the teams here. So together with Bill, who we've worked together with now for almost 4 years and have been to China a number of times, we have built a system where we can now develop a raw material system that is highly trustworthy, which will be, we think, a tremendous improvement for all of you buying raw materials. That same raw material now will go back into producing products that return to China and under the supervision of the CSIT and China Customs, because they will know and understand the system and they will have visibility into our process. Therefore, our products will go through this system, will be allowed an expedited entry into the China market, and the assurances that we can give to the Chinese consumer that these are authentic, high quality products that have been made in the United States with the highest quality Chinese materials. So in China, you often hear everything has to be a win-win, and this is very much designed to be a win-win. And as I mentioned, it takes a team of this strength and diversity to really meet all of the needs and capabilities to make this happen. So this is a big day as we're now telling the world for the first time how we are working together and progress we have made, which is substantial, and a preview of next steps. Next slide, please. So in summary, we are going to be developing the raw material side, and Bill will go into a lot of that detail, so I need not repeat it. And then next slide is that we will then take those finished raw materials using the qualified Chinese materials, bring them back into China that will include track and traceability features, adverse event reporting, We have a relationship with the China Consumer Protection Foundation, which is kind of the Consumer Reports, if you will, and the Better Business Bureau of China, that will provide a product insurance guarantee. That has never been done before for dietary supplements or natural health products. Then we'll also be opening our own online flagship store. For those of you that have been in the China e-commerce market, is having a flagship store on Tmall today is very difficult to do. They essentially do not grant any more flagship stores. This is basically, think of it as the mall, and you have your anchor stores, Nordstrom's or whatever it may be. And this is the same way in China, is that you have your anchor, and then all of the brands, individual brands that different companies would like to sell, go through your flagship. So that is literally the mall in a virtual space. So the US government has relationships with Alibaba and JD, the two largest platform providers in China, and that we're assured that this program will be granted a flagship status. And that will allow companies that have brands that they would like to bring into the China market a secure place both to sell those products with all of the assurances that we provide through this system. This has never been done, and that both the China government and our commercial partners there, as well as ourselves, are very excited about the potential to really provide a revolutionary process that really completes the virtuous circle. High quality raw materials made in USA, returning to China. It is a very high quality branded product in a secure sales venue with the support of the Chinese government. So it's ambitious. That's why it takes a team to do it. And we're very excited about it. We put a great deal of time and effort into this program, and we're delighted to share this news with you today. Next slide, please. Just to give you a quick final, is free trade zones are critical to this process. And just as a final thought, is that the cross-border e-commerce system works provincially through these free trade zones. And so what we will do through the flagship store is we will also have individual relationships with these free trade zones. We have visited a number of these. We have agreements in place, and they are ready to receive product today. They would love to take orders today. But they're waiting for us to open up this system so that they can then begin to sell through their showrooms and through their own systems. This process was created by the federal government in China as an economic development program to try and spread jobs and income development throughout parts of China that were lagging behind the East Coast. So once you understand the politics behind why there are free trade zones, why there is a cross-border e-commerce system, then it begins to make sense of why this system was built. And at the moment, it grew so quickly that it lacked the regulatory structure that we're now bringing to the system. And so with that, I want to thank again Eurofins for letting us use your platform. And Bill, I will turn the time to you. Look forward to the Q&A on the back end.
Thank you very much. So I really appreciate being here. I'd also like to thank Eurofins and the entire team, Loren, especially Amy, the technical expert that helps pull this off seamlessly. So thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you are. As you were talking, that this has never been done before, I was thinking a couple of things in my mind. The thought that, the phrase, if not you, who? Right? If not you, who? This should be done. It's a great project. We're honored to be involved in it. So, you know, if not us, who? So I'm excited to go forward. National Animal Supplement Council is a nonprofit industry trade association. We represent over 270 finished brands, and we also have a preferred supplier program. So we've extended quality and vigilance, both upstream and downstream. I'll go more into that. As far as our core competencies or things that we bring to the party, NASC, again, our preferred supplier program, we always have tried to stay ahead of the regulatory curve. So when the Food Safety Modernization Act was being developed, it was not just being developed for implementation on the human side, it was also on the animal food side. And on the animal food side, for complete and balanced diets, for example, they had never had standardized CGMPs that were required across the United States. So a lot of this ground that we had already covered was new, especially to the animal food side, and that you all on the human dietary supplement side are well familiar with. So we leveraged accomplishments from the human industry in some cases, and we paved the way in other cases. A preferred supplier program, we qualify suppliers and try to ensure upstream quality management. As we all know, quality products begin with qualified, tested raw materials from good, solid raw material suppliers. If you don't have good quality raw materials, you're not going to have a good quality finished product, no matter what your process controls are. So that combined with CGMPs and process controls result in quality products at the end. We also implemented and led the way on an adverse event reporting system, which is provides closed loop monitoring and continuous systems of vigilance. Our system has been in place for 13, 14 years now. We've invested heavily in the NASC system, that stands for NASC Adverse Event Reporting System. And I'll give you some examples of the system and show you the output of that. But those two foundations or systems or platforms are really pretty significant pieces in this puzzle, allowing this gateway to China to be open. We've established CGMPs and labeling templates. We did that without the government telling us to. We leveraged the 21 CFR Part 111 CGMPs for human dietary supplements. On the animal side, 507 is the equivalent to 117 on the human side. So we are recognized experts in this area in terms of leading the way on labeling compliance, and we have an excellent working relationship with FDA Center for Veterinary Medicine, which is the side of FDA that we work with. And one of the major differences on animal products in the States is we're regulated at two levels. We're regulated at the federal level by FDA, but also at the state level by departments of agriculture or some other agency within the state government that's responsible for regulating both animal food and animal remedies. And then there's a trade association that makes recommendations to regulators and tries to achieve consistency, called AFCO, the Association of American Feed Control Officials. And so they try to provide consistency. And so we work with all the agencies as well as associations recommending regulatory policy on the animal side. Next slide, please. So I'll start with the NASC Preferred Supplier Program. This program was really developed as a system of continuous vigilance and assessment because, as we know, quality is never a destination, it's always a journey, because we always know more tomorrow than we knew today, right? There are new potential pathogens, contaminants, other testing methodologies that evolve. So we always know more tomorrow than we do today. So our preferred supplier program was designed with these points in mind. We wanted to keep NASC members ahead of the regulatory curve. That's an objective of the organization. We always try to accomplish that. We wanted to reduce members' cost for testing and qualifying suppliers. As Loren said, testing, you can test yourself and audit yourself right out of business. So it's important and essential and required, actually, that we qualify suppliers. And with the disruption from COVID, traveling becomes extremely difficult. Going to China, a foreign supplier, may be impossible. So Eurofins, being a global organization, helps fill a lot of these gaps, and we'll bring the pieces together for you at the end. Another objective of the program was to differentiate quality suppliers from opportunistic suppliers. We're all familiar with opportunistic suppliers that don't care about quality, may figure out a way to cheat the system, fool the analytical methods, and then we wind up with adulterated product in the marketplace. And in our industry, pet side as well as the human side, anything bad that happens casts a disparaging shadow on all of us because we all tend to get painted with a broad brush. So the preferred supplier system is a system that maintains continuous vigilance at all steps, and it's ongoing. Next slide, please. The program includes raw material suppliers. So as Loren mentioned, a high percentage of the ingredients, 70% of the ingredients in human dietary supplements come from China. It's the same way for animal supplements. So we handle, just to clarify, we handle supplements, products that are similar to human dietary supplements for dogs, cats, and horses, okay? The ingredients in these products are exactly the same ingredients as are used in human dietary supplements. The only difference in the animal supplements are the palatants, because you have to get the animal to accept the products. Where, you know, I took a handful of supplements this morning and drank them with water. That's very difficult for somebody to accomplish with a pet. So it's palatants are different, but that's really the only primary difference between the ingredients that are utilized in pet supplements and the ingredients that are utilized in human dietary supplements. We qualify contract manufacturers, so we have members and just recommendations. They don't have to use our suppliers, but it's easier if they do because we've qualified them and posted testing information. So we require manufacturers to be independently audited and meet the requirements of either 111 and 117 or 111 and 507, which is FSMA on the human side. Testing laboratories, we also have testing laboratories. Eurofins has been a partner for us for a long time, not only an auditing partner, but also a testing partner. So we've worked with Eurofins, and as you all have grown and expanded and become a more global force for good in the testing arena, you know, we continue to be honored to work with Eurofins. So another program, another category, we also have other components and services like insurance services, labeling, packaging, critical components, as well as non-critical components. So one of the things about the raw material program is we post certificates of analysis along with 5 independent confirming tests that verify the information on that C of A, and we all share information. So we operate under the philosophy of a rising tide floats all boats. So if we share information and, you know, one person does a test, they publish that so everybody can leverage that test, then we all win. And we get the questionable people out of the industry. And at the end of the day, we increase consumer confidence and we increase confidence in the regulators that work with us. So we also have supplier profiles. So there's a pretty extensive supplier profile sheet that they fill out. We have audit certifications. We do require independent audits. NSF, UL, Eurofins does audits, but we want the specific standard referenced above. Next slide, please. The adverse event reporting system, we're a leader in the area. This is a system that's on par with any system of pharmacovigilance. My background is I came from the human medical device and drug industry before I got into the animal supplement side. I was chief operating officer for a $500 million medical device and drug company, so I was used to a highly regulated industry, you know, doing drug approvals and device approvals. So adverse event reporting and monitoring and maintaining systems of continuous vigilance is extremely important. If people recall that have pets, the melamine issue that occurred in 2007 and 2008 for pet food, that really gave FDA the foundation for implementing the Food Safety Modernization Act and driving that forward, which, as we all know, is the most sweeping legislative change impacting the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and both human and animal food since the implementation of FFTCA. So our system, no matter how rigorously any system is defined, it's never perfect, right? If it was, you'd never have a recall. So our continuous adverse event reporting system is a system of continuous monitoring and vigilance that can identify unforeseen events like the melamine issue. And that's where the pet food industry really suffered some significant challenges in questioning from the Senate Judiciary Committee, or whatever the committee was that held those hearings. I think it was Judiciary, that they said there was no early warning system in place. The human industry is being asked some of those questions now as well. So we were ahead of our time in developing this system. It's recognized globally. It's incorporated in Health Canada in their veterinary natural health products program. I was on the expert advisory committee that helped put that together. It's now been written into the Canadian Food and Drugs Act, and some of the reports that I'll show you next are recognized by the Canadian government in the Canadian Food and Drugs Act. So we have over 30 billion bytes of data in the system currently. We monitor and track over 7,000 active products, 1,400 unique ingredients in the system, and we have information, so labels are uploaded, and FDA does have access to this information for pet supplements. So FDA has access to labels, ingredient risk reports, which I'll show you, all the ingredients in the products, as well as the companies that are purveying them to the marketplace. Number of units shipped, that's a unique thing. So we have not only the numerator and denominator, so we can track and trend the frequency and severity of adverse events, because we have both the numerator and denominator, and I'll show you that in a report that we can print out. The data is combined across the entire industry, so it loses its individual identity. It's encrypted with multi-layer security and technology with SSL technology. It's programmed that we wrote because there was no off-the-shelf system. So again, just to emphasize what this system is and what it isn't, it is an early warning system. It is the most advanced system of risk management we believe in the world for these types of products. It is not a system that substantiates safety. Okay, safety and risk are two different things. Safety has to be proven with data and studies. Risk can be managed, but no matter how rigorously a study is defined, you always find things when an article of commerce enters the mass market, and you always find things that no matter how rigorous the study is, may not have identified. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show you one example. I'll jet by this slide quickly of an ingredient that we've all had problems with here and there, and that's chondroitin. So from an ingredient risk report, we track, again, 7,000 active products, over 1,400 ingredients, and we can print reports like this for every single ingredient in the marketplace from our member companies, which is about 85% of the industry by consumer spending in the United States. So we can tell you that there, for chondroitin, all forms of chondroitin, there are 1,388 products in the marketplace. It's been in the market for 11 years. Here's the statistical analysis in milligrams per kilogram body weight for dogs, horses, cats, and other animals. Next slide, please. And then we also compare that and track and trend adverse events. So we can tell you, and again, FDA has access to this information. So adverse events, if you look on the left column, the total adverse events are 1,747. That doesn't mean necessarily that they were attributed to the product. That has to be evaluated and determined by the company. So that's a report rate of about 0.72 per million adverse events. That's where the numerator and denominator data comes in. And we've had 19 serious adverse events. Again, maybe that was due to the use of a product and maybe it wasn't. It's up to the company to evaluate that and determine. However, that's in 2.4 billion administrations of products containing chondroitin. So we can run these reports on demand. I presented reports like this at when I testified at FDA on cannabis and cannabis derivatives in May of 2019. So we have ongoing data for all the ingredients in the marketplace. Next slide, please. So the first slide I showed you was just data for dogs. We have dogs, cats, horses, and other animals broken out separately, and then those are summed in the last page of the report. So overall, for all the products that that utilize or contain chondroitin in any form, there have been 4,007 adverse events. That's a report rate of 1.23 per million. There have been 43 serious adverse events. That's a report rate of 0.01 per million. In 3.2 billion administrations of products containing chondroitin in the species that we track, dogs, cats, and horses. So it's a very powerful system, again, of continuous vigilance, and that's really what brings closure to the bottom end of the loop. Adverse events are defined as an adverse event is any negative physical manifestation that an animal may have suffered, including transient events that may be self-resolving, may not even be due to the use of a product. So vomiting and diarrhea in an animal are tracked, recorded, and trended. Serious adverse events, a layperson, pet owner, or individual could not determine serious adverse events. That takes intervention by a veterinarian and determination by a veterinarian. So it's a transient incapacitating effect impacting the animal's ability to function normally, even for a short period of time. Non-transient or permanent health effect. Transient event is a serious adverse event, and we have a risk scoring system in the program that and gives companies a standardized form to, again, track, trend, and evaluate adverse events on an ongoing basis. Next slide, please. So those two systems, if I really break them down to the closed loop system that Loren showed you earlier. So if we start with raw materials and we have testing, verification, auditing. So for example, as Loren said, if we have a container of material that we can look at and evaluate and have a qualified vendor already determined through auditing and verification systems that meet or exceed the requirements of the foreign supplier verification programs now required by FSMA and the companies that market these types of products, then we can close that top end of the loop, help ensure that we have only high quality raw materials. We can expedite the acceptance process for the companies utilizing the materials. They don't have to stay in quarantine. You can avoid some of the delays. You can avoid some of the testing costs. You can't eliminate them because you have to have this written into your SOPs. So you still have to do testing, on both ends and verification, but you don't test or audit yourself out of business. And then through the adverse event reporting system, we've talked about and we've gotten quotes on converting the system into Chinese, so that on the China end and our China counterparts will ensure that there are specific numbers and pathways to report adverse events. So those adverse events can be reported from products that can be tracked back to individual companies or over a broader scope like raw materials if it impacts the a broader spectrum of the industry. So that really closes the bottom end of the loop, and this is a continuous system. It's ongoing, it's continuous vigilance and monitoring of both raw materials, production processes, and quality control, followed up with monitoring products as they're utilized in the marketplace, again, with the ultimate objective of increasing consumer confidence. And we believe that this system, we can pilot it on the animal supplement side, but it's certainly extendable and very impactful to human dietary supplements, as well as possibly other industry sectors like pet food or even production animal food sources. So with that, I really appreciate it. If there are any questions, I'll take them at the end, and I'll pass the baton to my Eurofins colleagues.
Great, thanks so much, Bill. And that's such a compelling database and reporting system. So thank you for going through that. Over to Nate and me here. So I'm Jay Mulligan. Between Nate and I and our colleague Clint Troop, we lead Eurofins botanicals and dietary supplement testing. So we're just going to spend a few slides here briefly going through some context of our breadth of services and what we cover geographically. So Nate, next slide, please. Great. So just an overview on Eurofins. We believe we are the global leader in biological testing, and with that, running over 200,000 analytical methods characterizing safety, identity, purity, composition, origin of products. As most of you know, we have a very diverse set of laboratories, most recently with our COVID testing sites, as well as at-home testing kits that were recently approved. We're nearing about 50,000 employees globally with more than 800 sites and nearly 50 countries that we're operating in. So just an overview of a highly global organization. Nate, next slide. And so for those companies operating in the US and distributing globally, the global coverage may seem like a layer removed from relevancy. However, Nate and I have full conviction that this is highly significant, and I think this alliance with UNPA and NASC is an excellent case in point for a program like this, where it gives Nate and I an opportunity to really grip hands with our partners in China and then in the other geographies that you see in the darker blue. So what we're really excited about is to leverage this global reach and scale for us to really make a big impact in the industry. And so within Eurofins, despite having this size for a long time, we've never really had the opportunity to partner in such a clear and necessary way as this. So we're really grateful to Loren and Bill for this opportunity for us to leverage and really get the greatest benefits out of Eurofins' scale and reach. So next slide, please. Great, and Nate, over to the US side.
Thanks, Jay, and thanks, Bill and Loren, for really leading into this. As the map populates, I'll be talking a little bit more about our connection to the supplement industry here in the US. And to really understand that, I think it's actually helpful to take a little step back in history. So really kind of what brought us here to this specific moment and why Jason and I are so excited about where we can take this. So to look at that history, we almost have to go back 3 decades, and it really spans a number of different organizations. So I've worked my whole career at the Covance laboratory in Madison, which joined the Eurofins family about 2 years ago. And our laboratory was really known for our pharmaceutical and infant formula background and as a food testing laboratory. However, as the supplement industry really started to grow, we were sought out by a lot of the large manufacturers, multivitamins companies, other companies operating in normal product forms. They were looking for standardization and quality. A lot of the standards that had allowed us to grow to that point, people like Daryl Sullivan acted as connections to the regulatory piece, and that's really what drove us. In the last 20 years, we've really been along the whole path that the industry has as we start to see some really unique and exciting new product forms like drink mixes, bars. All of them provide new sets of challenges from an analytical standpoint. I can tell you when you come up with an amazing drink mix that has 80 different dietary ingredients and still tastes great, it might taste great and it provides great health and wellness benefits. It's a little challenging in the laboratory environment, so that's where we really kind of cut our teeth in terms of dealing with the difficult stuff. However, there were some areas where we maybe weren't as strong. When new ingredients hit the market or new formulations came up, there were times that our standardization actually became an impediment, and there were laboratories that provided a more nimble, agile, maybe research type approach. One of them being the Analytical Laboratories of Anaheim that David G. led for years, and that now forms the real underpinning of an expanding laboratory in Brea, California, that Clint is leading. So that team developed some really unique technologies that allowed us to take a look at just about any new ingredient that was coming into the market that we could compare against known standards and identify ingredient strength, potency, purity more quickly. So that nimble approach really started to fill a need in the industry as well. And almost separate from this, but along the same lines, Chromadex had really focused in on the botanical market, as that market needed the ability to rapidly screen and qualify ingredient sources, sort out authenticity issues, and they built a fantastic library of standards that could be used to drive testing programs to drive quality in botanical products and in botanical ingredients. And finally, laboratory like Alpha Laboratories in Petaluma, California, focused in some unique product categories like sports nutrition. So when you look back at that history and all of these different laboratories, all of them met a different need in the industry. And we're really excited that we've spent the last 2 years bringing those laboratories together with a goal of providing a complete and really complementary set of services. So the laboratories in Brea and Madison are partnered together. Clint and I are really kind of holding hands on this. And we want to provide every option. A lot of times you need fast, standardized, industry standard testing to release raw materials for production or finished product testing to get products to market faster. Madison Laboratory is really structured to build that speed. We continue to invest in new technologies. We're going to have some really exciting vitamin testing technology to talk about in the coming months. But then we also have a laboratory in Brea that's able to look at some more unique instances and take a more agile approach, take a step back, take a research lens to some of these products and ingredients. And both of those laboratories are fully available, connected, can send samples to one laboratory, they pass back and forth as if it's a single laboratory. So all of the lab capabilities only matter so much. It really actually matters, comes down to how we work together, how we engage with industry. And I think when I look back at the last 20 years that I've experienced, maybe in the past, It was easy to say, well, we know how to do the testing. We've tested these products for years. We want to engage in a different way. It really comes down to a collaborative discussion. So let's have a discussion when we get a test result that we don't expect. And let's look at what we can learn about ingredients and products from a quality program, or maybe it's even what investments in a quality program actually deliver the most value. We see thousands of these quality programs. I think there's a lot of different conversations we need to have, and it's not about us standing here and telling you how to do the testing and what testing you have to do. It's a conversation about what is best for your business. I'm honestly not interested in trying to convince you to do more testing for the sake of doing more testing. I think Bill really highlighted that too. I'm excited to look at what we can do to help your business grow. And that's why this program to bring high quality raw materials out of China, it's been something we know has been needed for years, and return products to a Chinese consumer market that is highly attractive. That's been a struggle, and we've seen that working side by side with our customers. So let's talk about what is best for your business. I will tell you that this type of conversation is personal for Clint and Jason and myself. So Clint has spent his whole career working in the industry, working for retailers and manufacturers, and he brings that perspective to our team. It's a fantastic perspective to have for us to listen to. Jason has invested a lot of his personal life in the health and wellness industry, in these products themselves, and really brings almost a consumer mindset. And I've really spent the last 10 years of my career focused on how can we make this industry the centerpiece of the testing that we do in our Madison laboratory. And I'm really happy to say that we're at a point where that is absolutely the case. So we're looking forward to having the right conversations, whether it's industry-wide. I think we'll be doing more virtual events like this in the near future, or one-on-one. So we're really excited to hear what you want to hear from us. So we'll have the Q&A for the next as long as it takes to answer questions, and then we'll also follow up with a survey and really look forward to hearing from you what you think this program needs to look like. I think between UNPA, NASC, and Eurofins, we bring the platforms, we bring the expertise, we bring the connections to the right organizations to build this program, but we're going to need your input and your involvement to really make this program work the best for you and for all of us. So I want to thank you for the time you've given all of us today. Thank you for the questions that we're about to go through, and thank you most of all for continuing to make this whole industry such an exciting place to work. So with that, I'll bring Jason back in. We'll open it up to Q&A, and the whole group of panelists can answer those questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Nate. And while we're going through the questions, there's a quick poll going on. So if you could please interact with that. Great. So over to the Q&A, and please feel free to submit questions as we're going. So if you didn't get a chance to enter a question, now would be a great time. So Loren, I believe this one is for you, but we may open it up to the team. The question is around costs. So the idea is that by setting up these processes and putting them in place, there's likely to be an dramatic increase in costs. The question is, can these costs be absorbed or passed on? I think it's really around any costs incurred as we get this program off the ground and really put in place.
Very fair question. As we've analyzed the numbers, that there obviously is a cost to run this program, and that's offset by the savings that will be derived on the raw material side as the efficiencies of streamlined testing and the verification of a group of suppliers that we can work with. So we believe we're actually going to drive the price of raw materials, a higher quality of raw material, down, because we can consolidate a lot of functions that right now are being done separately, and there's too much multiple testing. On the US to China side, obviously there is a commercial opportunity to build sales. So that will generate a revenue stream for the companies. What we will be doing is attaching an administrative fee that will be relatively modest. It'll be 3 or 4 or 5% of the transactions as they flow that will allow us to administer and to run this program. But we think that cost will be absorbed and saved throughout the entire program. We recognize that companies will participate if they can get a better quality product at the same or better price with more confidence and be able to do business in China in one circular system. So as we've run the math, we understand that companies are going to look at the numbers as well as the opportunity. So yes, there will be an admin fee to run this thing. We believe that we'll be able to support the program that way, but you'll save money as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said, Loren. I mean, really, when we looked at this program, we're all very familiar with the price competitiveness and the pressures put on the industry, from a cost standpoint. So, really in the two components, our initiative on the top side, meaning the testing, verification, and audit side, was to reduce costs and streamline processes. On the revenue side or the return side, and opening the gateway to China and, allowing companies to access 1.3 billion people, that's a marketplace that many companies don't have access to right now, so they have zero sales. So as Loren said, that's it'd be a percentage, but it'll be a percentage based on you win, we win. It's a percentage of revenue. So our intention was that it would be reduced costs and beneficial both ways.
Great, thank you, Loren and Bill. Several requests for a copy of the presentation and slides. So just as a reminder, the recording as well as copies of the slides will go out within the next 3 business days. So you will receive it all for those that have asked that. Besides that, I think that wraps up the questions that came in through the question feature. So if you have any follow-up comments, questions, any follow-up at all, we're very eager to receive it. So please don't be shy. We're really grateful for those of you who have participated today and joined us for this webinar, and a special thanks to Amy, who organized it, and Loren and Bill for this partnership. So thank you, everybody, and we wish you a great rest of your week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Take care.